So language is the center of everything I do. For various reasons, I'm now using Chinese to teach the foreign students and using English to teach the Chinese students.
All right. Welcome to the Geopats podcast, where we scratch your cultural curiosity itch with many different themed shows. I'm delighted to have a changing script show today, and we have David Moser for talking about learning and using, more so using in this part, Mandarin Chinese. Thank you so much for joining us today, David.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure.
You are working at a university. Are you teaching language, or are you? What are you teaching exactly?
Right now, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, well, for the last, since 1994 or so when I came, I've been teaching at various universities, including the first one was the Foreign Studies University, and I was teaching translation theory, comparative grammar, and sometimes some English composition courses or something. Mm-hmm. And then for about 5 years, I worked for CCTV, as they called it back then, China Central Television, for the education channel. And I was doing translating and also doing hosting, doing children's English programming. A whole lot of kids, or not kids, adults come up to me these days and remember me from that show.
Aww.
Usually a beautiful woman who goes, "Oh, are you David Moser? Wow." And she says something like, "My mother really loves you." I remember when I watched you when I was 5 years old. So anyway, and then I worked for an overseas study abroad company called CET, and we trained generation after generation of young Americans or people from studying in the U.S. In Chinese language, culture, politics. Mm-hmm. A really great and important job. Yeah, I liked it and thought it was really important. And then the last couple of years, I've been at Peking University as the associate dean of a high-level graduate program called the Yanjing Academy. And now I'm back again to universities teaching translation and cross-cultural analysis to both foreigners and Chinese. And it's a great delight to mix those two together. I love being a bridge, and a bridge both ways is great. So that's what I'm doing now. So language is the center of everything I do.
Sure.
And I for various reasons, I'm now using Chinese to teach the foreign students and using English to teach the Chinese students.
Wait, really?
Wacky. Yes. Yes, because the foreign students are none of them are native speakers of English, and most of them have been immersed in Chinese courses since they got there. In fact, they take all their courses in Chinese. Okay. So their English has not improved, but their Chinese has.
Right.
And so when I speak to them in Chinese, they say, "No, your Chinese is too complicated. It's too fast. We don't understand what you're saying. Please speak in Chinese." And my Chinese is much less complicated, and they can understand that. And the Chinese students say, "We want to practice our English listening. Don't speak to us in Chinese." So it's switched. I speak Chinese to the foreigners and English to the Chinese.
That's really fascinating. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, for your students, your translation students who are still learning certain nuances of the language or certain phrases or what have you, do you ever compare notes on tools? Because you had mentioned that how you learn Chinese and how it's learned now is really different. Do you compare notes on that?
Right. Tools, I used to be very evangelical about it because a lot of people didn't understand the advantages of these digital tools. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, I think most people, unless they've been living on Mars, that they know that there's Pleco and they know there are these great tools. Mm-hmm. Usually it's just how to use the tools. Most people have downloaded Pleco but don't use its full functions, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the main thing that teachers, I think students are pretty much up to date with the possibilities and how to use it. Mm-hmm. What I find is that the Chinese teachers who teach Chinese are sometimes woefully far behind. They're still stuck in this old paper and pencil day, and they're still teaching students that way and not really taking advantage of the tools. For me, one of the most revolutionary aspects of the new tool thing, the Pleco and all the other digital tools, is that there is no longer such a thing as what we had to do in the old days. There's no longer such a thing as looking up a word in a dictionary. Mm-hmm. That concept has gone away.
Yeah.
what you do is you touch a screen and a thing pops up and you get the meaning and the opinion and everything, and then you go on. So this thing I described, this painful lookup process, is gone. And my students no longer even have to know or care what a radical is. He said, what's the radical of this character? He said, what's a radical and why should I care about it? So the entire way of looking for them, I mean, someone who's serious will know what a radical is, and because if they're serious about the language and they want to know more.
Sure.
But for the average learner, if they want to just jump in, they don't really need to know about where these parts come from and what the radicals are.
Do you think there's anything missing in their ability to use the language, not knowing that?
Well, there is in some sense that, obviously there's semantic information. There's a lot of clues you can glean about how to write the character by the radical. But it's a trade-off, Stephanie. I mean, you can't have everything.
What?
You thought you could, huh?
Oh, I have to go. I have to go cry now.
Well, to make you feel better, you can't have everything, but you can have more than you thought you might be able to have.
Oh, you're so kind.
Yes. So anyway, yes, the ease and speed of the lookup means that if you at the first stages you don't care that much about the technical aspects and you don't want to go on to become a professor of Chinese at Harvard, you can jump really fast into the language and do things with it without worrying about the etymological aspects and the character aspects and the complicated versus the simplified characters. You can just toss all that away and just jump into learning. Of course, if you're like me and you're more nerdy, and like you, obviously you want to get serious about it, you need to know more in order to really deeply understand the language.
Right.
But that's the great thing, that the tools now allow you to make inroads into Chinese without being a full-fledged sinologist, and I think that's a good thing. The other thing is there's a real danger with the Chinese language, especially with teachers, of giving the idea that what the language is all about, or the main thing about Chinese, is the characters. And you've got to really understand them and be able to write them all, and before you can speak. And that's just wrong. That loses track of a very basic linguistic tenet, which is the core of language. The core language skill is speaking and listening. That's the core thing. Writing is an adjunct to speaking.
Wow.
It is an oral medium. Many people speak wonderful Chinese and cannot write at all.
Right.
And if you can learn to speak and be in the language and understand it and speak it, the writing, much of the writing task becomes automatic, because you already know the words, you already know the sounds, and the writing just comes with it.
At languagecardgames.com, we believe if you can play cards, you can learn foreign languages. We offer a variety of games for all ages and skill levels that will be perfect for your next study session, game night, or language club. We even offer free shipping to any location worldwide. What's more, you can get a special introductory price on your first game. Just enter the coupon code GeoPatsPodcast when you check out at languagecardgames.com. Since 2016, we've been producing addicting card games that function kind of like a Trojan horse for language learning. If you or someone you know likes to play card games, likes to learn languages, or both, this would be the greatest thing for them. If you've ever thought that learning languages is a struggle, or if you've just been looking for something to enrich your daily practice, rest assured we've got something for you. We've incorporated a grand mixture of easy and advanced language and linguistics concepts into our games so that as you play, you learn and grow. What could be better than that? Thanks for listening.
Hi there, I'm Brendan Davis coming to you from Beijing, and I'm the co-host with Ying Li of the podcast How China Works. Since you like Steph's show, we thought you might like our show too, so I want to tell you about it really fast. Our first season was designed as a crash course in China for foreigners and to help a young Chinese audience who's going global. Those shows are heavily researched to give insights into the most critical situations you'll need to understand, regardless of whether you're coming or going from China. This year, we switched gears to an interview format. We talked to leading China players from around the world, people who are actively engaged in shaping, changing, or navigating this fast-changing dynamic. We've had some truly amazing guests join us, so we would be honored if you would join us to check us out online or at one of our live events we're doing around Beijing now. You can find How China Works in all podcatchers or visit us online at howchinaworkspodcast.com to learn more. Thanks a lot. Now back to the show.
Can you give our listeners a little bit of a snapshot of your very long and intricate relationship with the Mandarin Chinese language?
Oh, well, yes. I was someone who came to Chinese through a back door, you might say. I didn't really plan to ever do this for my living, and much less stay in China forever, it seems like. I just got interested kind of for intellectual reasons. I was always interested in languages, and when I bumped into Chinese, I said, this one looks a lot more interesting than some of the European languages I was dabbling with. And after a year or two of that, I got an amazing sort of serendipitous, I guess you would say, opportunity to actually come to China and take part in the translation of a book. A friend of mine named Douglas Hofstadter, who wrote a book called Gödel Escher Bach that won a Pulitzer Prize, found out his book was being translated at Peking University.
Wow.
And she said, you've been studying Chinese on your own for a year or two, why don't you go there and take part and make sure they're not, butchering this translation, right? So he sent me free of charge here. And that's where my Chinese began, really from just learning it by myself. And then coming to Peking University and struggling mightily to understand the translation. And from then on, it was so exhilarating, I just couldn't stop. And I still consider myself a high-level learner, dedicated learner of Chinese.
Language learning seems never to stop.
Never. It's not really like learning computer programming or something. Although computer programmers would probably gripe at that. So, what do you mean? We learn all of it. There's new stuff all the time. And so, but yeah.
Wow. Okay, I'm stuck on that. You said after a year or two of self-study, did you say?
Right.
Can we unpack what that was? What were you doing to learn that in a year or two you could participate in a translation already? That's impressive.
Well, it's less impressive when you know how actually bad I was in the participation. I got back then. We're talking about 1986. Were you even born then? I don't know.
Yeah,
you
71.
seem young enough to.
Yep.
71. Okay, but you were a little girl. Okay, well, so there weren't very many Chinese learning methods back then. Mm-hmm. I mean, this was a dark era, there wasn't the internet really. So I was using these old John DeFrancis books. They were a very great series. Some crotchety old sinologists might know what I'm talking about. But they were very systematic, and it was all on print. There was no such thing as CD-ROM and stuff. And I was just what you might say, very practical. Even from the start, I realized that if I were going to really learn to speak it, I needed to just learn to say what applied to my life and my daily life and what I wanted to say. So rather than go through a systematic textbook and learn all the patterns and stuff, mostly I just learned some of the basics. I learned how to write because he has a good book on that. And I mostly started to make Chinese friends, and I would just talk with them and I say, how do I say this? And what if I want to express this? What would I say? And they just told me, here's how you would say it. And I made my own little phrase books and worked on those. And so after a year and a half, I was not in any sense fluent in Chinese. I did go to Taiwan for a month or two to try to study Mandarin there, but really got nowhere because it was the environment. There was a lot of Taiwanese in the environment rather than Mandarin, which didn't help me much. And they were using the fantizi, the traditional complicated characters. And I was distracted by other things. But by the time I finished a little bit of that immersion for a couple months and learning, I could have basic conversations. The main thing is I kind of knew what Chinese was about. I understood the structure. I knew how to go figure out how to understand a Chinese sentence, and I could say some basic things. So, and since I was only basically reading the translation, reading the proofs, and try to get the meaning out of it, and then seeing if there was any wrong interpretations.
Right.
I was okay for the job because I could sit in my lonely room and pore through dictionaries by the hour, and after a while, by a while I mean 2, 3, or 4 years of this, I finally got pretty good at it. But it was a real tough slog. It really was. And I have to tell you, back then there were no word processors. So I was actually looking at manuscripts handwritten in Chinese.
Oh.
And that was a terrifying experience, because in the very beginning I could hardly even read the printed characters, much less. But the saving grace was I had the original text. Okay. So I would look at that. It said, computer processing is such and such and such. And so I knew somewhere in these chicken scratches, there had to be the word computer in Chinese. And I would look and say, oh, this looks like it. Yeah, ji, sun, ji, yeah. And then I began to say, oh, that's how you write it. And so within the 4 years, I not only got better at reading and writing, but I also got much better at reading the, almost illegible Chinese handwriting, which was a big boon for later on. So that's how I started. Yeah.
There's so much to unpack with that. We could spend a whole half hour just on that. And but because that was pre-Pleco, and so were you using a paper dictionary and looking it up by stroke?
Oh my God, yes, pre-Pleco. If I could, if I could have miraculously had Pleco back then, I hate to say this, but I probably would have, killed my own mother to have that tool. It was such an incredible thing back then. Back then we had to do it the hard way, which was big, thick dictionaries of many kinds, and you had to learn how to look a word up in a dictionary, which meant you needed to learn what the radicals were. You needed to be able to count the strokes, and it was a learning experience. It was like a whole course in itself just to learn how to look up words. Yeah. And I could struggle for literally 1, 3, 4, 6, 8 minutes just trying to find the word in the Chinese dictionary.
That sounds fast.
It is one of the most painful things you can imagine. Yeah.
I actually wanted somewhere between HSK2 and HSK3, I wanted a paper dictionary, and I wanted someone to teach me. And my friend and I sat down in a coffee shop, and he taught me. But I honestly, because of the time it takes and because Pleco is so amazing, I barely used it after that. But it was interesting to see the process.
Exactly.
But wow, and gave me a massive.
So this is my copy of a famous book called Wei Cheng by Qian Zhongshu. And I wanted to read this book, but it was just so impossible. I had to look up words so I wanted to read this book, but looking up a word was so painful. I didn't want to keep looking up words over and over again. Right. So I read this whole book. I don't know if you can see, but every single page I wrote down in pencil, the annotated version, like every word I had to look up, I would have to write it down. Every single page has my handwritten notes on these characters that I had to look up. So I read the entire book, writing these notations because I didn't want to keep looking up the words each time. Right. So then I would go through it and read it a little bit of time, and the words I didn't know were already there on the page. Right. So I basically invented Pleco.
There you go.
This is Pleco. This is non-computer Pleco. Right?
Exactly.
So it gives you the net definition. So I don't know if Michael Love has his patent on Pleco, but I think the idea really belongs to me. I should be suing him.
Oh, sure. Well, like all great ideas, it probably came from what people were doing already, just in a small, compact mobile form, right?
Yeah, right. And great ideas come from desperation, and that's what this was.
A few quick notes. The Geopets podcast newsletter comes out every Tuesday. Go to stephfuccio.com to get that, and also get on the mailing list to get it every week in your email inbox. If listening to podcasts makes you think about making your own, I can help you. You can get a free month of Podbean hosting service by using this promo code, podbean.com/virtual expats. Don't forget the S. If you're an expat, I'm also doing some beginning expat podcasting workshops online. go to stephfuccio.com for more information. If you don't want to record your voice but need a voice, you can buy mine. I'm doing some voiceover work at voices.com/actors/Steph Puccio. What I'm not charging for are the promo spots in these episodes. These are offered to content creators and people who have announcements about information, content, and whatnot that is related to what we're talking about in these episodes. I actually want to bring in your book, A Billion Voices.
Okay.
I just consumed the sucker in 2 days, and I was circling so much stuff. I barely can see the writing or the. I was just, and I'm so glad that you. I can't find it right now, but you did quantify the phonetic component within characters.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and how many there are,
and how unreliable they are.
Oh no, I don't like that part. Are they really unreliable?
They were reliable when they first devised them.
Right.
But as centuries go by, language changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave the example of Shakespeare, the Shakespeare rhyme, that love and prove don't rhyme now, but they did in his time. Well, the same thing goes for these Chinese characters. The sounds they chose were rhymes then, but now they're so far away, it almost doesn't help very much at all. Sometimes it's a totally different sound.
I had kind of picked up on that organically with the HSK stuff, but I didn't quite know how to search for things that sounded similar enough. But I found that it kind of helped.
Right.
It kind of helped me. It should sound kind of like this, but it's not exactly that what I think it is. Can we go back to when you initially started to learn the language? What was your super efficient, get pretty darn good in a year or two method? How were you doing it?
I think it's because I didn't have those tools. You just had to be, a lot depended on just sheer memory. And luckily my memory was better then than it is now. I think if I had to tackle it now, there's no way I could remember all the characters. But I also had the advantage that I was already in sinology, and I'd read a lot of books on exactly these problems. So I was already very sort of hip to the whole problem of phonetics and sounds in Chinese. So, I was learning as I went. I think, sadly to say, and I said this in one of my writing, that, if you've been studying a while and your attitude is, I just have to keep going because I've spent so much time, I can't stop now.
That doesn't sound engaging. I know you said that it seemed like a more interesting language than the other ones you were learning, but was there anything in particular that inspired you to get started or that kept you going in the first big jump?
Yeah, for me, the inspiration was not just wanting to use Chinese, although that is a wonderful thing. I was interested in the sort of psychological, cognitive aspect of it. The question of whether the kind of language you speak, your mother tongue, would influence in some way your thought processes, like your logical reasoning, or maybe the way you conceptualize things, or gender, or any of these sorts of things. And the more I studied French, which is the only other language I really got into, the more I felt like this is just English. I said it's like recognizing that Superman is really Clark Kent without his glasses. It's like that, about that. But with Chinese, there were some deep structural differences, and there was differences in the way they handled abstract nouns, and the differences in the ways they handled singular and plural, and time. Everything was very different. And so I thought, I started devising experiments. I did my PhD on psycholinguistics, trying to understand these issues. So I wanted to find a language that was different enough from my language that I could actually get a sense of what it would be like to live in that world, in that psycholinguistic world. So now that I speak it much better, I'm getting more and more data, I guess, on that. And I have some opinions on that. But that was the question I was focused on. And so for me, it was so important to get to the point where I could really understand what Chinese people were saying and why they would say these things. And I just found it endlessly fascinating. So it wasn't just a desire to do business, or to be able to start a company or do a business meeting or something. I was trying to understand what would it be like to think in Chinese,
Right,
and even if that, yeah.
There's so much. We could do like 5 episodes just on different parts of what you just said. But the thing that
I'm into it.
Yay! Welcome to the monthly guest, David Moser.
Yes.
But the thing that drew me in this time, post learning to code Python, is the look of the characters. Instead of intimidating me, they finally started to call to me, and I started to feel like their complexity was helping me learn language more than I had any other language that looked similar, that had the Latin script. Mm-hmm. Now, to be fair, total disclaimer, everybody that's watched the YouTube channel or has listened to the podcast knows I've fallen off of studying for months now, and I'll probably get back on, but I did not get to a high level. I don't know what my relationship with Mandarin is at this point, but that shift and that brain burn that came from studying the characters versus studying and using a language that was so similar to English was very different. And that's kind of the name of what the podcast was for a long time, was changing scripts, because I felt like there was a cognitive difference in switching scripts of a language, not just switching the sounds of the language. So it's interesting that you had that experience with the sounds, not just the characters and the look of it, the writing of it.
Yeah, although I'm like you, I was really hooked on the script as well. I still am. I just think it's the most fascinating,
it's so
thing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. It definitely is. Like, I've been looking for a calligraphy class for as long as I can remember, and occasionally I'll run across one, and I'm sure they exist in Chinese. I just can't read enough to quickly grasp things within time. But within the English posting world of events that are happening, I'll like get onto one and they'll just have one like a year, and I'll be like, hi, can I have more than that, please? Can we do a weekly or monthly one?
Right.
The process of writing them. Anyway, can you
need to get a private tutor, because that's the only way you really learn it. Yeah,
I know, and financially I'm working up to that. but
okay.
It's a challenge. Yeah. Can you, because we talk about time in English versus Mandarin Chinese so much on this podcast, and I'm really excited to hear you dig into how differently that is. If you were to explain that to someone who's just entering the Mandarin Chinese language, is there a way that you could describe how different it is?
Well, time, I guess, could mean a couple different things. One is how they talk about time. Whether, because other languages sort of image time differently than English. Usually we talk about past, present, and future, and we make an analogy to space, not time. So we say, we have Christmas is ahead of us. I've put all that behind me now as I look forward into the future. And so everything has spatial metaphors is how we talk about time. Right. That's a metaphoric issue. That's kind of like how we envision it in the mind. Of course, one of the differences is that Chinese has an up-down component, which we don't really use in English, right? So we talk about 下个星期 and 上个星期, the upward last up week and down week and so forth. So there's that aspect, which is very interesting. And there's a woman named Lara Boroditsky, who specializes in these sort of studies of the psycholinguistics of Chinese and time. And she has some very fascinating experiments about it, and shows that native speakers do, in fact, sort of envision time in a different way. There's also the fact that both languages, you can either envision time as sort of moving forward to a distant point, or you can imagine time as moving toward you, the speaker, and you're stationary, and time is what moves, right? So, so you can say, Christmas is almost here, or, the end of the semester is coming up toward us soon, or something like that, right? And you're envisioning yourself as stationary, and the time point is moving inexorably toward you, right? But then you can also say, as we move boldly into the 21st century, or as we, forge our futures, or something like that. Now we think of ourselves as moving ourselves forward towards that future point in time. And Chinese can talk about both of those things, has both of those ways of talking about time. But the other time aspect that to me is maybe perhaps a little more interesting is just the tense aspect, the fact that our traditional European, Eurocentric, Indo-European notion of past, present, future, and everything has to be marked that way.
Yeah.
Chinese doesn't mark that. It marks it in a different way. And the linguistic answer is Chinese doesn't actually have tense in the way we think of it. It has what we call aspect. So it's more concerned whether an action has occurred already or is in the process of occurring or will occur or something like that, rather than the simple notion of past, present, and future. And that is really fascinating. And what it means that you're handling information in a different way. And very often some of the information we think is crucial is just not there in Chinese. You have to glean it from the context.
Yeah.
And I think that is so much fun and so interesting. And something that foreigners have a hard time grasping. And we tend to put too much information into the sentence when actually you don't really know. I mean, what you just have to, that's contextually determined. You don't have to put it in there. You just, Chinese are used to leaving it open, right?
Yeah.
So we say, if you 明天有电影，你去吗? That just sounds to us like, are you going? Do you go? Why don't you? Where's the future there? Will you go? Would you go? Do you want to go? You just say, 你去吗? 去. And that seems so bare bones to us. Like, well, how do I know if it's a would, will, shall, what? But that's just the way Chinese works. You just let context determine it. Right. And there's a whole lot of fascinating stuff like that. By the way, I also just mentioned this, not with time, but one of the things that first blew me away was that the third person, ta, can mean he or she or it. Mm-hmm. And it never really occurred to me that this really made much difference because there's a written form that's different, right?
Right.
Until I began to take part in situations where we would be talking about someone who would be coming in 2 weeks.
Right.
And we would use ta will be here. Who will meet ta at the airport? Will ta need any extra, facilities here or whatever? Right. And then at some point after these 2 weeks, someone might say, hey, ta 是男的女的? Is this ta we've been talking about a male or female? When it struck me at the time, like, this is incredible. How do these people go for weeks with an image of a mental model of somebody who's a professor in their head, and they never really settled down whether this person was a male or female? Because in English, from the first sentence, you would know. Right. And you would never forget. Right. And I thought, this is amazing. This is fantastic.
Have you asked any native speaker that, of like what they envision when they hear ta, but they don't know?
Well, there's very often clues that they can assume, but they can make sexist assumptions. If it's we're inviting our computer programmer is coming over today, probably most people assume it's a male unless you tell them suddenly it's a female. So they usually have their stereotypes and their defaults.
Right.
But on the other hand, if it really is a neutral thing, there's really no reason that they should know, and it really actually doesn't matter. Right. The analogy they would give me is, in Chinese, it's very clear when we say 哥哥 and 弟弟 that one is my older brother and one is my younger brother.
Right.
So when you people speak English, doesn't it bother you that you don't know when you say my brother, and I don't know whether it's your older brother or your younger brother? Like, doesn't that seem weird that you don't have that information? I say, that's true. It doesn't seem weird at all. I mean, at some point, someone might say, is he your older brother or your younger brother? Because up to that point, who cares which it is? Yeah. The same is true with gender. I don't need to know who's going to come and fix my toilet, whether it's a man or woman, really, until they actually come to the door, and then it's a man, it's a woman, right? So we don't really need to know in most cases whether it's male or female.
That's very true. That's very true. When I was teaching in Japan, my Japanese students were floored that we didn't have terms for like older classmate, like upperclassmen versus I guess we do upperclassmen, lowerclassmen, but we wouldn't use them as
we don't use it.
Do.
Right.
And when they're talking about someone, they do use them every single time, not just the first time you talk about someone kind of thing.
Right.
And they were just like,
but the reason,
why? It's missing.
Because, well, the reason for that is in Japanese, you have, as you know, right?
Yeah.
The honorifics, the way
Right.
you would address the older one differently than the younger one.
Right.
And you would address the outsider differently from an insider.
Right.
So they have to care about those distinctions
Right.
a lot more than we do. It doesn't matter for us.
So it's like Mandarin Chinese is simplified, whereas they don't inflect their verbs. But then it's more complicated because there's these other things that we don't think about.
Oh yeah, right.
So yeah. I could go on forever, but I promised you half an hour, and we've gone well over. And you've already agreed to come back, so there's no need. So I think we can probably wrap this episode up.
Okay. Next time you could talk about my book. That'll be great.
Yeah. Well, what do you want the listeners to go consume of yours right now? Like, what thing do you want to tell them about? Or let's start with that one.
Well, certainly my book is there. I guess for Chinese learners, if they haven't read Why Chinese is So Damn Hard, they can go read that.
Yes.
That's a good start. Yeah, that's a good start, yeah.
Although
that's outmoded, but that's sort of, what's the word? It needs to be updated. It's outdated, but it's still useful for some people to read.
What's outdated about it?
Well, it doesn't talk about, that was before there were the Pleco issues, the technological tools, the digital tools. So it was all about struggles of looking up words in dictionaries and stuff.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah.
Okay, great. And if they wanted to reach out to you on social media or what have you, where should they?
I tweet. I'm a twit. So I tweet. I'm just David there's 2 underscores. So it's David _ Moser on Twitter. You can find me there.
And I'll put that in the show notes for y'all, but just in case you don't want to, just in case you're in movement and you don't want to look at the website right now.
Or you can just drop a tweet to Stephanie and say, how do I get in touch with David Moser?
Oh, I see. Now I'm gonna
yeah, I'm going to fill your mailbox with people wanting to find me. Yeah.
Hey, that wouldn't be a bad thing at all. Podcasting is a pretty silent medium, no matter how many downloads you get. So I welcome it. StephFuccio@gmail.com, in case you're all. And if you spell Fuccio right without me spelling it, you get extra points.
Oh, good.
Anyway, well, thank you so much for this today. I know we veered a little bit.
Fun.
Thank you very much. And we'll be hearing from you again soon.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much to our guest, David Moser. I put all of the information for David down in the show notes, and I will be tweeting and Instagramming about him as much as I can over the next few days so that y'all know that this information is there. And just in case you don't show note it, you'll have the information in social media form so you can consume the other things that he's put out about the language. Even if you're not studying Mandarin Chinese, I think the cognitive things that David talks about are really interesting, and he writes about them in a way that's incredibly approachable, even to non-language geeks. But if you're listening to this, you probably are a language geek, so you're fine. Anyway, thank you again to Damon Castillo for the background music. This is Sometime Guy, and is off the Mess of Me album. DamonCastillo.com is his website, and you're going to hear the full song with lyrics in 3, 2, 1.
I've been wasting all of my time standing at the back of your line, trying not to lose my mind, yeah, when all I'll ever be is your sometime guy. Well, I've been waiting for my moment, and I've been howling at the moon. Well, I've been living with this torment, 'cause there's nothing else my heart can do. Well, I've been wasting all of my time standing at the back of your line, trying not to lose my mind. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I put my foot down like the man I am. You pull the string and make me dance. Oh, I can't believe the shape you got me in. All these thoughts could drive me mad. Well, I've been wasting all of my time standing at the back of your line and trying not to lose my mind. Well, all I'll ever be is your sometime guy, your sometime guy. Sometime guy, oh Lord. Something's better than nothing, oh, but nothing's better than this real love with you. Oh, everyone needs something, and something keeps me coming back to you. Oh Lord, well, I've been wasting all of my time, girl, standing at the back of your line, I'm trying not to lose my mind. Well, all I'll ever be is your sometime guy. Oh, all I'll ever be is your sometime guy. Oh, all I'll ever be is your sometime guy.
The "is it morning yet?" deal. How about now? Or now? Because morning time is McDonald's breakfast time. And that's the best time of all the times.
Wake up with a little splash of sweetness. Get any size iced coffee from caramel to hazelnut to French vanilla for just 99 cents until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Membership fees apply after free trial. Cancel anytime.
You know what's wrong with health and fitness? You weaponize it against yourself. Why didn't you go to the gym today? You're so lazy. Why did you eat that? You have no self-control. Stop it. At Beachbody, we think training and caring for your body in a way that works best for you should be about loving yourself. Let us help you without all the judgment. Here's how. Go to beachbody.com to claim your free membership and start feeling great.